I'm Will Hedrick,
And I'm Jordan Schaff.
and this is Dog Tears and Timestamps, a Witcher TV show podcast. Is that what I say
Netflix. Brought
now?
to you
A
by
Netflix
Netflix.
podcast? Yeah, brought to you by Netflix. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Uh,
that'll be how we do every intro. Just remember that.
yeah, just that exactly. I guess, yeah, I should have just said a Witcher podcast. I was trying to remember what it was that I said for Game of Thrones and Good Omens. That was the problem. And I just said a Game of Thrones podcast.
Yeah, good on this
I think I got
podcast.
confused because we were both reading the book and watching the show.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it was.
Witchercast.
But yeah, Witchercast.
2019.
Witchercast 2019. Until I guess the last episode, which will be Witchercast 2020. But in any case, this is Monday. It's literally Monday. So this is going to come out the same day. We're 2 episodes into the Netflix original series, The Witcher, which by original they mean adaptation of an existing property.
That's original, right? They did that with Arrested Development.
I suppose so, yeah.
um,
I think that all they mean by original is that they're the ones producing and funding it. They're not. Yeah. It's not like The Office isn't a Netflix original. Yeah.
No.
But it's on there.
Might as well be. It feels like that's where I watched it. Like that.
I think by now that's definitely where most people have watched it.
Yeah.
But
so what do you think about these episodes? Like, when did you watch them? Like you said, you watched them at like on a kind of projector with your mom and dad?
No, it was just on a TV. But it was I watched them last night. Once I realized that I wasn't going to be able to come home at the intended time, and so we watched them last night on like a small TV in the garage where they watch football. And even if we had watched it in the living room on their slightly larger TV, it's still only like a 47 inch or something like that. Like it's nothing. Mm-hmm. It might not even be that. It might be like 43 inches in the living room. So not now that I'm spoiled by my 65 inch 4K TV with HDR in my room, I'm a little spoiled there.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the optimal viewing experience. Certainly not if it comes in 4K. I don't know if they're broadcasting it on Netflix in 4K. I haven't looked into it that far, but if they are, yeah. Well, Good Omens was in 4K, although that was Amazon Prime, of course. But they can still broadcast in 4K over the internet. So hopefully it is, and I can see it a little bit better these next 3 episodes.
Yeah, they're probably not going to make it in 4K then for these first seasons because it did not seem like super crazy high like budget to me, even on my TV. Like it was really good, and I really enjoyed all of it. And nothing ever really pulled me out of the experience, but there was a few times that it's like, I don't know, you saw Geralt climbing over this like rock, over this mountain to go look at this city, and it was just like, it just felt and looked like a green screen and like a fake rock. And he was climbing over this mountain, and I mean, it was just, it never took me out of it because I was just super into The Witcher. Like I honestly, like, I was watching it with someone that like has seen the game a lot, but hasn't ever, like, doesn't know anything about the show. So she was like, Witcher, that's like Witcher mode. I was like, is there even a Witcher mode? I don't know that from the book. He doesn't explicitly say like I go into dope Witcher mode that slows everybody down so I can beat them up. I was like, I think that's just his experience, and that's like for our viewing pleasure, like.
Well, he's definitely faster than your average human, but
it doesn't. He's not.
Well, there is more than once where he takes all the different potions and tonics, and it enhances him to even far beyond his regular level.
Yeah.
Like whenever he's staying in the one of the short stories, whenever he's breaking the curse on the Striga, he goes from being able to see all right in the nighttime and then he takes a potion and then he can see in the nighttime as if it was day. So he does have like a quote unquote Witcher mode, but it's just him taking all the elixirs that he makes. So there is an element of that, and that's also part of. I don't remember it happening at all in these first 2 episodes, but his appearance will change depending on the elixirs that he takes as well, because they do, enhance his body.
Yeah, he started off with these like black eyes.
Oh yeah, whenever he's fighting the Kikimora right away, yeah, he does. Yeah, he looks like that whenever he takes like whatever combination of elixirs, or certain ones do certain things to him. So.
Did you hear that? Start?
No. Well, I mean, the fan on my computer's running.
Oh. Okay, my bad. Yeah, man, I got the game actually like before I even started the show
Oh yeah, which
because
one? Two?
I tried to get two, but it didn't exist to download easy, so
Oh,
I didn't go
okay.
get it either. So I just got three, and
Hmm.
but it was on like super sale
I was gonna say it's
because
probably on sale right now because all the winter sales are happening, across
oh I
platforms.
thought I was just like I was sitting there I was like, do you think that like the Witcher game is on sale because the show just dropped? I think you're right. Yeah, the winter sale that makes more sense. But yeah, it I don't know. It looked like fun. I bought all the DLC and pretty much for like the price of the original game,
Hmm.
And I'm excited to get into it. I don't think it'll really spoil anything for the show. And honestly, I thought it was kind of interesting that the show took the liberty of like hopping around to different like different story beats at different times, kind of like the first two books that we read. They weren't
Yeah.
necessarily um, chronological. It felt like uh, the Sword of Destiny was that was what it's called, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, was it that?
The second prequel,
Yeah,
but yeah.
it felt like that one was a little more um, sequential, kind of in order. But the other one, the first one, it just felt kind of like it was just like here's a bunch of stories. To me, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe not, but it was. I got the vibe of like the first two books before even the story started from this the first two episodes I
Hmm.
guess that we watched because
Well,
we're working.
every story that happens in these first two episodes are literally stories from those prequels.
Oh, true. Yeah,
So
but I mean, yeah, I guess that's why.
aside aside from the Yennefer stuff,
Yeah,
which is a backstory that we've as of yet not gotten in the books so far as we've gotten.
yeah.
We know that she was a hunchback,
Hmm.
and we know that at some point she was taken in to become a sorceress for
Hmm.
training or whatever. But that's all that we know. She hasn't talked about it as of yet.
Right.
Um, so I don't know if she ever does. It seems like it would
Yeah.
be something that she wouldn't really talk about in detail as a character. I don't know that it's particularly important as far as the books go either.
Yeah.
But I was talking with my parents about this. I think that they're doing it in the show because I think the show is targeting the audience that hasn't read the books or played the games.
Yeah.
And so, if the people who are creating the show, or at least writing the show, are fans of the series, or maybe even to a greater extent fans of like Yennefer as a
Hmm.
character, if you're then trying to present everything to like a virgin audience that doesn't know this
Hmm.
property or these characters, then the best way to get them introduced to a character that you like would be to give them the backstory that doesn't exist, possibly, or even if
Yeah.
it did exist, but
We don't
to
get it
do
till
so.
later, and yeah,
Yeah,
we have all these
exactly.
preconceived notions of
Hmm.
Yennefer as we know her, and it is kind of interesting because we get that like in the last wish, we get we sort of get. I mean, we learn that she's a hunchback, so we don't necessarily get any of her backstory, but Geralt
Hmm.
kind of sees her in that light, and then he
Yeah.
gets that sort of not I don't even want to call it sympathy, but he definitely almost I think it's more like
Well, it's like we
it's
talked
more
about when
like
we covered
empathy.
that bit. It was
Yeah,
empathy. Like
there you go.
he can sort of empathize and identify with that sort of
Yeah.
imperfection that
Hmm.
would be shunned by the general populace because that's what happens to him daily as well.
Yeah. I don't. Obviously, we haven't read a part about Yennefer going through any of this, but I think that that is kind of the same vibe that they're trying to do is like give us the same feeling from those first two books that we're
Hmm.
coming in with the just like we did. I guess maybe that's what they're trying to do with this show. We came in with this pre gathered knowledge, of these
Hmm.
prequels, and then we hopped right into the story. Whereas, like I don't know, I guess they could have just started right in. And honestly, I thought they didn't have. They were kind of lacking that little vibe of Geralt being like this all-knowing, just sort of take it for what it is, like kind of thing. Just because they were giving us so much, like to grow from. I don't know if maybe you didn't get that vibe, but
I don't know.
yeah,
I'm not. I don't think so.
yeah.
But
I guess
because
he seemed real like green still to me. Maybe because he looks so handsome still. Like in my mind, they were imagining like so much more weathered and like seasoned, but maybe that's all it is. He's just like so handsome that and like
yeah,
and young and like young looking like even for Geralt being like whoever knows how old he is.
right, yeah, yeah. I would think that I think I would maybe agree that Geralt probably from the original author's perspective, was a little bit more grizzled looking, maybe a little less handsome or whatever. Henry Cavill's obviously just like a really handsome guy,
Mm-hmm.
uh, through no fault of his own. And so, but the Geralt in the games is very handsome too.
Yeah, I figured he probably was gonna be because the
Mhm.
more we learn, I don't know, like when you kind of broke it down last week, how the author did seem kind of like he was just trying to write this character that could bang all the hot witches. I was like, is Geralt supposed to be like this, like smoldering, like you didn't know he was handsome, and then you see it, and it's just like, oh, like it just gets you. But like,
Mhm.
I already forgot his name. Henry
Henry Cavill.
Chiseled Chin. Cavill, okay. Uh, yeah, he just sort of gets you right off the bat. Whereas like Geralt in the books, it felt like he kind of I don't know. I liked him from the start, so he sort of always had this energy around him, but he's never been like attracted.
um,
Have you been attracted like characters in books? I feel like I have.
yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
I'm sure I've gotten. I mean, I know I've gotten attached like emotionally. I don't know if I'd say attracted, but like the images I conjure up was like, okay, I'm
Hmm.
gonna, because like especially for Yennefer, they describe her as like super curvy and like
Right, yeah, just all
yeah.
like, stereotypical, conventional criteria for, beauty, right, and all that sort of stuff.
I see a lot of like. Do you think they're gonna use the same actress for like
Whenever she's an adult,
non-deformed?
I
Oh,
would
I
think
guess I
so.
guess yeah, I guess she would.
I would assume so. It would be, unless they find somebody that looks very much like this girl. Because
Yeah.
even though the girl that's playing, young Yennefer or apprentice Yennefer, is slack jawed and hunchbacked, I don't
That
think that
wasn't a
she
jawbreaker.
I don't think that she actually is either of those
Oh
things.
right.
It that would be something to that could be looked up and found out by just typing in the actress's name and seeing what she looks like. But
Hmm.
I think that that's a thing that she's putting on for the show,
That's
because you
kind
can
of
see, like, aside from the being
the
what I'm
obvious.
assuming is a put on slack jaw and hunchback, she's a very pretty girl.
That's what I was gonna say.
It's
You can tell
pretty
that
evident.
there's a lot. There's not. There's a lot of uglying up that they did to her. But
Yeah,
like they
yeah.
just, as long as they just take it off, and I don't even really feel like you
And
have
once
to
they
do
have
too
her
much to
straighten
hide
her
her. Yeah.
shoulders and set her jaw straight, and they're done with the acting of her
Because
being ugly, then she's gonna be.
I mean, sorry, go on. I
I
got
was,
excited.
I'm sure you know exactly what I was gonna say. I was just gonna say attractive. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, even the actress now, I feel like they've, I don't know if they did it intentionally, but I feel like they've dulled down all of her, um, like her curves and her tone already. Like she didn't really have any sort of like really like curves. Like she didn't have any like big
Well,
breasts
she's
or
also
anything. And
wearing rags and
that's
is hunched over.
that's
So
for sure. It helps a lot, I'm sure.
yeah,
And
hard to see any real particular figure whenever you're so disfigured as a character, and then also not wearing anything that's flattering.
yeah, were you cool with that wizard getting like being into her?
The
Forgot his name. These names are hard.
Yeah, it was. I don't remember it either because I decided that he doesn't matter. I don't think that any of the
He
characters in
seemed
her
too nice.
backstory matter.
Yeah.
I think that we're just seeing, one, her origin, so that, for two reasons. One, it's a part of the world building that this world is fucked up,
Hmm.
and you can't really trust anybody or anything. Because again, I think they're targeting an audience that does not have any familiarity with the
Yeah.
series. And then two, showing why, and to the extent uh, that it exists, Yennefer's brutality and coldness, because she is that. She
Oh
is
yeah.
those things as a character. And like at the end of the second episode there,
Yes,
she
exactly.
pushes her friends who were turned into eels into the pool, as her teacher says. She does it without really much hesitation.
Yeah,
Once
not much
she,
convincing,
yeah,
really.
like she kind of rushes in at first, and it's like, you turn my friend into a slug, which seems a little kind of like defensive, like, why would you do that to my friend? And then the teacher's like, they're tools for you now. And so she's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, this is how I, ascend. And then becomes her goal, because now she's got this avenue to power where her whole life was, being trodden upon. And so I think that this whole Yennefer backstory bit that we're getting in
Hmm.
the show, I don't think any of those characters matter. I think that they're just stepping stones for Yennefer to become the character that we know her to be, and it's purely for the uninitiated,
Hmm.
the everybody who has no familiarity with these characters in
Yeah.
this franchise. That's my opinion so far. If they do something different with it, then obviously we'll see. But
Yeah.
I think that now that we've spent 1/4 of this season seeing that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
I don't see how that it could matter more than that.
Hmm.
Uh, but
Yeah. I kind of came up with this wild like theory of like because those other girls seem to have some sort of like magical ability, even though she turned them into eels anyway.
mhm.
Um, and it did. I don't. I mean, obviously,
Well,
it did.
those ones were the ones that were the most successful. But I think that the teacher sees the capability that Yennefer has and says, well, this is going to be my focus then.
It just kind of felt like to me she picked Yennefer like and bought her for 4 pennies or whatever
Hmm.
because she was like she came from that exact same thing. And I don't know if that's true because I'm definitely projecting this whole new backstory on the witch that's like
Right.
training her.
Hmm.
But I'm projecting this exact same like backstory, and I'm like the way she's like gonna ascend is like she's gonna take all like this potential from all of the girls that like she pushed into this water like
Hmm.
I turned it into like the Hades pool of like swimming souls and like I
Yeah.
was like she's gonna use that and she's gonna turn it into like the center point of her like in like magic energy and she's gonna like suck all the magic out of them
Hmm.
and I
I
don't
don't think that, well,
I
because
said it bad. I'm sure there's a way
yeah.
that they could write it in it, and that would be be a thing, and that would be like a source for some of her power to ascend, and then she could be like this all
Right.
powerful cool witch that obviously only the witch that picked her could see her becoming
Hmm.
that ruthless and like she had the right mindset and a bit of an innate ability. Those together, you just suck the magic out of other people and then
Right.
shove it. I don't know. I just made it. I went crazy with my imagination, I guess, and I was like, I hope that's true. And
Right. What it seems like to me is that certainly, if she just buys her for nothing because she's coming through town or whatever, or maybe she tracked her down, via the portal that she created,
that was cool. I
and
wanted to talk
uh,
about
and so then she's like, okay, well, let me see if I can find where this person is who created the portal, because obviously she's like, a recruiter or whatever, and finds her and says, okay, well, I can feel the magic coming for her, so this is what I'm looking for. I can buy her for nothing because she is nothing to these
that.
people, and then blah blah blah. And then she's there for what I think is probably months up until the end of the second episode when we
Hmm.
see the eel stuff. So it's that's plenty of time for the teacher to see from her being like, okay, this is just like some recruit I picked off the street,
To see an
to being like,
actual.
oh, you do have promise. I don't
Hmm.
think it was like going into it knowing the promise there.
It's got to be pretty rare to do portals, right? Like that's got to be big.
Well, they do say that portals are difficult several times in the books, depending on a bunch of different things. How
Yeah.
far away is the destination? The pretty logistical,
Yeah.
obvious stuff.
Things that sound like
Um,
they would matter.
but then for her to be able to create a portal without any real training
Hmm.
as successfully as she did, whenever she first does it, the guy who she's kind of into but also spying on, who's also spying on her, uh,
That just seems like
is
classic sorcerer
yeah.
mentality.
Well, again,
Both ways,
yeah,
It's
again,
like
it's world
sorcerer's not.
building. It's like this is
I
a
love
shitty
it.
place.
Yeah.
um,
Oh, and sorry,
and there's so
kind of
much
hopping
political
into.
intrigue that happens in the series, and so this is kind of like a big introduction to political intrigue.
And this is pretty cool too for where we are in the book, and we'll obviously talk about it.
Hmm.
It just totally made me think about like what series trying to avoid,
Right. Yeah.
basically. And it's just sorry to even go there, but
No.
I want to say it, but just in case I don't say it in the next
Mm,
one.
yeah.
um, man, that I feel like they picked a lot of good characters, not obviously not characters. They picked good actors, and there were I guess just maybe a few little things that like that little I can't even remember what they're called. Like a horse, or like not a centaur, but a.
Oh, the Sylvan.
Thank you.
Whenever, yeah, that story
I mean,
when they're at the edge
obviously,
of the world.
yeah. I guess obviously I've never seen a sylvan, so I don't know what they look like. But that one looked pretty like odd, I guess to me, even just like a just extra sort of Pan's Labyrinth kind of,
Yeah.
um,
Well, I mean, yeah.
I don't know. I guess their features were just a lot bigger and stretched out. Like its head was so big. I don't know. It wasn't. I didn't expect any of it. And then when the
Hmm.
Sylvan's there, I was thinking just like in my head, I had this Sylvan being like almost kind of like like if it was a female Sylvan, it would be something that it'd be like if we saw that out in the woods or whatever, it'd be hard not to follow it off, you know. Whereas if I saw that guy, I'd be like, shoot it, and then we'll donate it to science, and we'll be the guys that found the first whatever, you know. Like
Mm.
if it was like the Sylvan in my head, girl, like the ones in my head were always this kind of like elusive, like hee, like fun little wood nymph more than the Sylvan, I
Right.
guess, you
Well, I
know.
mean,
But like
but I mean that's pretty typical of like all fantasy tellings, and that's why these creatures, whenever they're female, or because obviously none of these
yeah, I
things
guess they don't
exist,
have to
but
look the same.
like mermaids were a thing that sailors came up with, sirens were things in Greek mythology and all that. These are
Same.
all stories that people created thinking that they had seen that sort of stuff,
And the
and of course
merman,
they were all just like horny as fuck, and they were just like, well, what if I can find this female form that is like alien, and I can bang that.
yeah, I mean, I
And
guess
so it's
mermen
all
weren't super
inspired by just,
sexy and like
yeah. And so I
yeah,
mean,
it's just
but
horny
then
guys in the
obviously if
woods.
it's, yeah, that's all it ever
Horny
is.
guys on the
That's all it
Sylvan.
ever was, because all these monsters and creatures and things are all based on, to varying degrees, old actual human myths.
Yeah,
And so, of course, whenever you're creating those things, the male is going to probably, depending on what you've decided this set of monsters does. Are they hunter gatherers? Are they just straight up monsters that are predators? What are they? Blah blah blah. Depending on their function as a monster in your in your creation, if the male can is like this giant hulking monster, sort of like a play on like the ideal male persona as well,
mm-hmm.
being strong
Macho.
and all this sort of stuff. And then the female counterparts to those monsters are often attractive and but
Yeah,
still
like
like
a
really
succubus.
alien and all that sort of
Yeah,
stuff. I mean, so yeah, that kind of thinking has been going on ever since any of this was actually created.
yeah, and it fits too, just making like the yeah. I guess it fits exactly what I did, just like stereotypically
Hmm.
following. And I mean, it'd be interesting, I guess, to run into a female Sylvan. And see if how similar or different they look to the one that we met.
Hmm.
I haven't seen too many differences in. I guess we haven't really met any halflings or dwarves yet in the show, have we?
No.
So I thought that one of the girl in that first story that where like Geralt is. Uh,
In Blaviken,
Thank you. I was just like, and her name starts with I think an F
Renfrey.
or Renfrey. There's an F in there in a
Hmm.
weird spot. Renfrey, and that was yeah. I guess I'm just thinking, like, I thought we ran into halflings in that bar, or like one of her hench person was like a halfling, but that doesn't. Now that I
No.
think back, it was another bar scene with another halfling in it. Yeah, because she wouldn't have a. I mean, not that halflings can't fight, but it seems like she probably wouldn't have a halfling
A
on.
couple of them were definitely like on the shorter side, but like 5'8",
Mm-hmm.
not like 4 foot. They were just shorter, and certainly shorter than Geralt.
Yeah,
So,
I've heard pockmarked a lot. What is that?
if you've got like a pockmarked face, you've got like not like cavities, but just like a bunch of marks, and they're sort of like dimples in a way.
Oh, but
But you usually have like a ton of them. It's usually,
kind of like scars, maybe
yeah,
from.
it's
Okay.
usually what it is. Certainly in uh, in universes like this where sanitation is not a thing and
Yeah, I
people
feel
get
like Sleep Bottom
diseases
would
and
have a
stuff
lot
like
of
that. Yeah,
pockmarks.
yeah, because you just get a disease and hope that you beat it.
Ugh.
And so then that affects your body obviously in ways that it doesn't affect us in modern day society, because we can get steroids and be done with it.
You think you could beat it without steroids?
Probably not.
You're like, no, no, dude, I couldn't. I wouldn't make it. Man, I definitely wouldn't make it in Witcher school. And like the more I like watch this show, I just like this universe is like cutthroat and ruthless. Like it's a miracle. Like humankind even made it as far as we did into like this super civilized, clean world that we have the privilege of living in. I'm sure that obviously it's not like that everywhere, but watching this show, it's obviously just not it's not real, but it's like some of it's drawn inspiration from our past, and that's
Yeah, but humans are also the only species in the real world that are as intelligent as we are. And so, that's why we have dominance in the actual world, is
I know
because
I
we're
was.
smart enough to be able to do things and figure things out in advance.
It just feels like we've only gotten sanitary in the last like 100 years. Like it just feels like everything is so gross. Like
Well, the
it's
Romans
so gross.
created aqueducts so that they could have clean water running. So, I
Nice.
mean, it's not like it's that new. I mean, the standard that we have is definitely relatively new, but cleanliness as a species goes back a long ways. We recognize that if you drink water from further down the stream than somebody shit in, that you're going to get sick from it. Like we,
Not
we put those
everybody
things
realizes
together. Well,
that.
I mean, as a species, we fixed that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um,
I
but
never.
in like other universes where there are other sentient and intelligent species, that's why there ends up being so much combat. And usually the only reason that humans win out is because generally speaking, what they always say is like, well, because humans' lives are shorter, they're just inherently more industrious, and they also tend to breed more quickly and all that sort of thing. And so just like sheer outpopulation is what ends up making humans more successful than other races. But if it wasn't just sheer outpopulation, then yeah, the other races would probably win almost, 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Because humans kind of suck from like a greater perspective of evolution, aside from just literal intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems. Yeah, you're right. Just the numbers. We just throw mass amounts of human lives to defeat just the elves and the other races. Humanity. They're so cool. Yeah, I mean, I still can't just get over thinking that it's just dirtier.
Well, it is. So I mean, you're not wrong.
I'm like so clean most of the time too. Like obviously I get dirty every day, but like I shower all the time. Like I shower a couple times a day. Most of the time, because like I shower in the morning
Mhm.
and then like I get super sweaty and dirty at work, and I'll shower like because I don't want to go to bed in my sweat and like
Right. Yeah.
grime from the day. So just putting myself in like any of their shoes, thinking about like not that I couldn't do it or anything. I've gone camping and like stayed in the
Well,
same
you'd
place
have
for
no
like
choice.
weeks
So.
and weeks. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I wouldn't have a choice, but I don't know. I guess I just like diving. I really do kind of put myself like in there and think like, what would I do if I was there? Like, how would I? Like, I always think of like when we get any like sort of view into somebody's training. Like,
Hmm.
I always think like, okay, like pay attention. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I'm not getting trained, but I think you got to learn how this works. So, what do you think about the show? Are you excited for it to go on?
Yeah, I'm excited to continue watching. I don't, I'm not 100% sure where the season is going and where it's going to end up,
Yeah.
because we've now spent a fourth of it on things that have relatively no consequence to the greater saga at hand.
Well, yeah, and everything's in like different timelines. It's like, is this how they're gonna tell the whole story? Like throughout the entire series? Is it just gonna be hopping around and we piece it together, kind of like
No, there's no
Westworld?
way. That would be ridiculous. That's asking way too much of the general Netflix audience.
I mean,
It's
Westworld kind
asking
of.
too much of the HBO audience, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I mean that was a lot for Westworld. I definitely had to watch like a recap video to make any sense. And it's like if you have to watch a
To
video
ask that of
hardcover,
the binge nature Netflix audience that just watches fucking How I Met Your Mother every day,
yeah,
that's way too much asking of those people.
yeah,
So
and
they're not
even.
going to do that. We're just our main characters are Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer, just like in the books,
Hmm.
and so we're starting with them and being introduced to them as characters, because again the show is targeted to the uninitiated, I think. Because one, that's how you make the most money. As successful as those games are, and as successful as the book franchise is now,
They've already
that's
got
not
those
enough
guys.
people to make money for Netflix to be able to say, yes, this was worth what we've spent on this.
Well, yeah, and they've already
But
got all of the gamers. They've got all the gamers and their friends of gamers and like the people that have heard of it. They've already got all them to at least give it a shot. Like everyone's looking for that new void to fill Game of Thrones or whatever. And you're kind of
mhm.
right. When I was watching this, it's like, yeah, this will do it. I think at least like it feels complicated enough and big
Well, it's
enough
got the
to.
potential to. I mean,
Yeah, I think it does. So I don't want to speak too soon, I guess, but
but so I don't know. At some point, obviously, will converge
Mm-hmm.
and whatever. But the show is supposed to cover what happens in the books. It the first season's only 8 episodes, and yeah, in Blood of Elves, there's really not a whole lot that happens. It's just as far as like major story beats, anyways. It's not like we fight a war, have the conclusion, and then go fight the next big evil or anything in that one book. It's only like 300 pages. Like we talked
Mm-hmm.
about, and one of the reasons why we moved into the second book for the show. Um, so yeah, they don't have to get that far, I guess, if it's intended for one season per book. But again, we've already spent a fourth of this season
Outside of the book.
outside of the greater saga, and or the greater arc that makes up the saga. Because aside from you know, the only thing that happens so far in these first 2 episodes that has anything to do with the greater story arc is seeing Cirilla go through the sacking of Sintra.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. The stuff that Geralt goes through with the Kikimora, that's just a short story. And then the stuff that he goes through with the Deovel, that's just a short story. The only thing that was beneficial of that is being introduced to Dandelion,
which was very beneficial.
which could have been done in literally any other way.
Any other way.
But that's just, what ended up happening from that. But it's all because, like I said, this is all world building. It's introducing us to the political climate between humans and non-humans. It's letting us know that this world is fucked up and, nobody is on anybody's side, really. And it's introducing us to these characters if you don't know them.
Yeah.
So, but it's just, again, we've already done a fourth of this season doing so.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if that's how it paces out, that's how it paces out. Maybe they do it really well, but it, it just seems like a lot to do those things.
Yeah. It is interesting, the short story that chose to introduce Geralt being like the butcher of Blaviken.
Yeah.
Just yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's a relatively pivotal story for
Yeah.
Geralt because it's one of the most ideal ways to show how he can become a thing that people hate.
Exactly.
Without
Still
just
doing, yeah.
Yeah, because the alternative is this like, oh, so people hate him just because he's a mutant.
Right.
It's like, no, this gives like a concrete thing. Like, he starts off almost immediately, he kills the Kikimora and then he takes it, he goes to the tavern to find the alderman and immediately everybody's like, no, you're a mutant, get out of here. So we get that.
Mm-hmm.
But then he does something a little bit more concrete that provides an avenue for everybody's hatred to go towards him. And we can see that this is the world that Geralt lives in,
Yeah.
And so I guess that's why they chose that one to start.
It's a pretty cool fight scene too.
Yeah, it was really good. I liked it a lot. It was pretty well done. I like the choreography in it. The only thing that I didn't like visually about these 2 episodes so far was just the opening scene with the Kikimora. The monster looked really bad CG wise.
Yeah.
I tried to look up the budget earlier whenever we were briefly mentioning that, and I couldn't really find anything. People on Reddit were conjecturing that it was 10 million an episode, which is a good amount, but it's not Game of Thrones amount. But it also hasn't made as much money as Game of Thrones yet, so that's why.
Game of Thrones was more than 10 million an episode in the beginning?
No. I mean, like, net where Game of Thrones ended up was like, stupid amounts of money per episode.
I thought you were saying they were more than 10 in the beginning. I was like, man, I heard it was like 1 million an episode in the beginning.
I bet it was less than that.
See, yeah, I heard it was 1 million. My brother.
I bet the pilot was probably like 300,000. It couldn't have been much. Well, because it was all practical aside from the White Walkers, but even that was just like, I don't think they showed White Walker up like close without like snow blowing and quick cuts and that sort of classical tricks to not have to have a really good looking monster.
Which I mean, that point being said, like if that's true, like they did spend a lot less than the rumor of like 1 million that I heard. Like then you'd think that maybe they could have done better.
Right, because it's a bunch of nobody actors except for Sean Bean. And so it's not like it's not even the casting would take like a ton of money either for the pilot episode.
Same thing with Witcher. The only one we know about is
Henry Cavill. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can definitely save money on that, and that's obviously probably part of why they do that as well.
You just think Netflix has got to have a lot of money, but I guess maybe they don't have all the money. You got a Netflix account, right? Or do you watch it on your like a family account, or do you have your own?
No, I had to start one for the show. I've been sitting on a 30-day free trial email from Netflix for about a month now,
Oh, nice.
purely for this. And whenever we're done, it's done. I don't need
Okay.
Netflix for anything.
Yeah. Except for to support your favorite content like The
Well,
Witcher.
I'm not going to continue to have a Netflix account when The Witcher's not happening.
And that'll especially show Netflix what's what. You'll be like, I only got you for this.
Oh, my $15 a month is not going to mean anything to Netflix in the greater scheme of things.
Oh, that'll go somewhere. I don't know where, but it'll go somewhere. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to watching these next 3 episodes. I don't know why the lightning bolt chose to not even hit Yennefer in the hand. It dove around her body and hit her in the chest, and blasted her off. I was like, what the fuck? Like, did she do that? Did she just have bad connection? Like, she couldn't, like, the lightning bolt came down and she just, like, twerked it around and then it still shocked her or something? Like, I don't know what happened.
Well,
But,
she captured it in her body because then she throws it back at what's her name, the head witch.
yeah, but she sucked it in, or I thought that
I don't
wasn't
think she
like
did
an
it
accident.
intentionally,
Yeah.
but
So
that's what
what?
happened.
So why didn't it shock her hand though? Like the highest part,
Well,
like it
it
did for
definitely
everybody else.
started there, I'm sure,
Oh, to me it looked
and
like
then
it
it
just
traveled
came.
down towards the chest or whatever. Um,
Okay, to me it looked like it came down and then it just like dodged her hand and smashed her in the chest like a
mm.
super controlled electric blast. And then like yeah, she did obviously keep it in her and throw it back. But you think that was the moment that she was like, "Oh, this girl's got it."
Oh, I think that it was pivotal. I don't know that it was like maybe the moment, like she was at zero and then that brought her up to 65. I think it was
Yeah.
probably growing, but then that was like a moment.
It.
Certainly, I mean, for the audience, because we're not going to watch the whole several months of
Mm-hmm.
training, because then we, have 800 episodes.
Yeah.
But that this is for an audience that is seeing, the culmination of the growth that she's had and,
Yeah.
the increase or not the progression of relationships between the students and her and the teacher and blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
I mean, it's got to be a big deal too that she's doing all these what have to be high level spells, like redirecting a lightning bolt, like it from your like kick, like putting it in your body and then throwing it back out, like
Hmm.
moments later, like holding it for a minute and then releasing it again. Like that's got to be a high level spell. Just like the portals, like her accidentally
Well,
doing
all
these.
her things are just her having no control over
That's
her
what
emotions.
that's what I'm saying. Like, but even still, she's doing these high level things unintentionally, but she's still doing them. Like, I can only imagine that some people probably can't even do them. Like and they're probably skilled, you know.
Well,
Does
because
that
then
kind
the
of make
head.
sense?
No, I see what you're saying. But the whatever her name is, the head mistress there, even says like some sorcerers kill their emotions and grow in that way, but and some are like us and
Yeah.
give into their emotions. So I think that it's one of those things where it's like raw power up early, and so like
Uh,
you've got no control over it, and
mm-hmm.
it's just because your emotions are exploding at that moment. Just something happens. There was never any like intention of doing it or probably even capability of doing it again until you get to that point skill wise.
Mm-hmm.
uh, but in that moment your emotions explode, as is often the way in magic in different universes. Whenever your emotions like explode, something miraculous happens. But I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that is necessarily indicative of an innate ability that you have.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, because like,
I think more if it's anything, it's your capability or your potential to use your emotions uh, for power,
mm-hmm.
which is them being able to control that ability is the next thing.
Yeah, and then to yeah, it almost seems like it would defeat the purpose if you could control these. I guess maybe not defeat the purpose, but like in my mind, I'm thinking like if these crazy wild emotions are what's like after training a ton and being really skilled, I can only imagine that like then if you had your crazy wild outburst, it'd be like only magnitude like greater, like exponentially greater. But um, to think of being able to control that like unrelenting like fight or flight rage that I'm assuming you're kind of tapping into. It's got to be. It almost just seems like an oxymoron, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like to be able to control this uncontrollable thing, And,
Right.
But I mean, that's obviously.
Well, I think from
I'm
a
sure that's
practical
what they're gonna
standpoint,
do.
it's
Yeah.
more of being able to stop yourself
Okay.
before
Yeah.
it's gone too far.
Right.
Like you can give in for a second, but then being able to have the presence of mind to come back,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, and from a practical standpoint, I think that's more of what controlling your emotions means in this case,
Okay. Yeah, being able to stop the fire.
Certainly in the magical constraints that are, in this universe where there's a cost of energy for, performing anything.
Yeah,
So if you were just to let like your emotions go to an outrageous level and not be able to come back, you could potentially end up, like killing yourself or seriously harming yourself.
Did you understand what was going on with the whole like lifting the rock with the life of the flower or whatever?
It's not unlike the rules of magic in Aragon.
That's what I was thinking, but it just seemed like kind of an exaggeration to just shrivel up that girl's arm.
Well, yeah, but that's for visual effect in the show,
Yeah. Okay. Because I was like, damn, that takes a lot of magic to lift a rock. I didn't even fuck with it.
But those rules were explained in the last chapter of Blood of Elves. Whenever Ciri is going through training with Yennefer at the monastery, they talk about the cost of magic and having ideally to be able to draw the energy from your surroundings. So it's something that, at the very least, something that we've seen before.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. I guess I just never thought it would be that great, But I mean, that's why.
But again, the visual effect for the show.
Yeah, I mean, but even if it is that great, it's like obviously then it makes it even more like, oh, you do magic? That's pretty dangerous. Like I saw firsthand why, because to even pick up a rock, it'll cost your arm.
Right.
It's not like Aragon where like it just takes that much energy. It's like if you don't know what you're doing and you don't pull from the energy around you, like.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I don't know. I guess now that we've talked about it, that makes a lot more sense for the visual effect of like making magic seem very like it's. I love how they said it in Game of Thrones. Melisandre, she's like it's a double-edged sword with no hilt or no handle. What is that called?
Well, yeah,
That's what
you've
call
got like a handle and the hilt, and it's I think like depending on the sword, the hilt is several components.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. Anyway,
she's saying it's like a double-edged sword with no hilt. So it's like it's better to have a weapon than nothing at all, but it's still a very dangerous weapon.
Right. Yeah.
Cut yourself. So I don't know. I thought that was a pretty nice way to not maybe nice, but a very elegant, a pretty picture drawing way of describing magic. It definitely feels like it's that sort of vibe in this show. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, generally speaking, it's kind of to varying degrees. Of course, it's these rules of magic having a cost is nothing new. Right. Even like in a video game, it's just that you have a pool of mana, but that's a literal representation of that. There is a pool of energy that you have that is depleted by casting a spell. So there's always a cost. Yeah. It's just that sometimes you get somebody's hand shriveling up, and sometimes you get a blue, orb in the lower right hand of the screen depleting. So.
That's the exact thing I was thinking. Yeah. I'm excited.
I think that it's going to continue to be good. I think these first two episodes were good, not great, but good. I think it's going to continue to be good. Hopefully, it gets great.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't want to stop watching.
It's engaging. Yeah, absolutely.
Engaging. It's good way to say it.
Yeah,
so
I'm excited to watch more.
Yeah,
I may watch an episode tonight, depending on how long it takes me to edit this and post it. But yeah, I'm excited to continue. I'm excited to continue with the books even more than the show.
That was fun to listen to.
I want the second book to end already, just because I would want to just get through the saga at this point, knowing how they're paced as each individual book only being a small piece of the actual narrative that's happening, knowing that I'm going to have to get through all 5 books to get any real sense of closure on any storyline, because they're all relatively short.
Yeah.
I'm just ready to torch through it and just get to those points that I'm looking for. Which is the unfortunate part of choosing it for a series of episodes for this show.
Yeah.
Is that we have to pace it out for at least 2 more weeks before I can then just scream through it.
You think you will?
I really hope so. I know that we've talked about this a million times that it's difficult to read something on the side of this show, but I really want to. And with them being as short as they are, it'll be 3 books, assuming that they're each like 300 pages like the first two. That's about 900ish pages, maybe 1,000 if it's a little bit more per chapter. So ideally I could I could get through that in a week if that was all that I was reading.
Yeah.
And I wasn't letting myself do other things aside from reading. So it's certainly doable. It's just will I stick with it as much as I want to?
And I plan on getting the rest of the series too. So we'll at least be talking about it.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't think I have anything else to say about the show.
Yeah, I know.
There's not really anything else. It's just those first 2 episodes. They're just going real slow. But that's like again from the perspective of somebody who already knows these things and knows that those stories that were told have next to nothing to do with the actual drama that's going on, or that it's going to get to eventually, rather.
Yeah, you're right. I think it is a little slow, but I guess it is nice that it's so conducive to new viewers and new people for the story. And,
I think that's exactly what it is. I think that's all that it really is. And knowing that they're hitting that angle as heavily as they are, it won't be as much of a shock these next couple of episodes for me.
Well, yeah, let's watch them.
Yeah. We're gonna watch 3 episodes now, so episodes 3, 4, and 5.
Yes.
And that's for this coming week. So next Monday, just have them watched by then, or really just watch the whole fucking show if you want to, and then just listen to us talk about it. But we'll just be watching the next 3 episodes.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the best show.
It's exciting for sure. And then in 2 days' time, on Christmas Day, you'll be hearing from us with the first 2 chapters of the book, Time of Contempt, the second in the actual Witcher saga.
They say Time of Contempt.
Yeah, pretty quickly we get the titular line.
So
didn't take very long.
It is a time of contempt.
Yeah.
I believe is what was said.
Yeah. So look for that Christmas Day. If you got nothing else to do, you can listen to us go on about the first couple of chapters for, I don't know, probably like only 45 minutes or so. And then rinse and repeat. Show on Monday, book on Wednesdays. Look for that.
Yeah, I like that we'll be their Christmas treat.
Right. Our show lucky that Christmas is a Wednesday this year. So look forward to that. Yes. We'll see y'all then.
All right. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at ears_stamps, and our Gmail is dogearsandtimestamps@gmail.com. And just like Will said, check us out every week. And keep up with your anime. This is our viewing podcast, like our the watching part of our podcast. So I'd say keep up with the anime, because we'll have like a little special episode when I think all that concludes, just to tell you guys what we feel about it.
About 4 months away at this point, but
so you're running out of time.
Yeah, we're about halfway through those seasons, so we'll be looking for that at some point in 4 or 5 months, depending on when we can even get those recorded. As well.
I'll be dropping teasers all throughout.
Yeah, but anyways, I'm Will Hedrick.
I'm Jordan Chapman.
And this is Dog Ears and Timestamps.